agreement is possible, and that's something that we're going to continue to work between the parties. John,
Sure.
go ahead.
Could we consider in the Middle East the strike on a school in Gaza? I think the latest toll I saw from officials in Gaza, the health minister, is 93 dead. Israel has said that it identified 31 militants in that sort. I mean, how much credence do you put in this? I mean, do you think that I mean, even if 31 militants were killed, that means another 60 plus non-militants died in this. What's the nature of the assessment that the U.S. has, both on the facts on the ground and whether there's any level of concern on this?
So first, John, let me just say we are deeply concerned about this weekend's horrific incident on the Al Tabeen school in Gaza City that killed a number of people sheltering in place. And our hearts go out to the families of those who lost loved ones, and we are praying for a speedy recovery for those who have been injured. We have been clear, both to our partners in Israel, that every possible effort needs to be taken to minimize the impact of civilian casualties. But again, as we have seen in this instance, as our Israeli partners indicated, that there were a number of Hamas militants using civilian infrastructure, in this case a school, to hide amongst that. And so we condemn and deplore any attempt by terrorists to hide amongst civilians in or under protected facilities. That needs to stop. Sites such as schools may lose their protected status under international law when they're used by combatants, but that certainly does not take away from the moral and strategic imperative that our partners in Israel have to take every possible step to make sure that the loss of civilian life, impacts to civilians, is not mitigated, and that's something we'll continue to stress apparently. On this specific strike and incident, we continue to be in close coordination with our partners in the IDF and have continued to solicit more information around it, but I don't have any information beyond that.
Sure. On the more information, is there any indication that U.S. weapons were involved in this?
I wouldn't speculate on that. I would let the IDF speak to any operations that they may or may not have undertaken.
And just, I mean, they're saying that 31 militants are there, and you said that you're seeking information. I'm not you personally, but the United States is seeking information from the IDF. What are you looking for? I mean, are you looking for them to verify that those 31, that the names match up with people they're targeting?
Look, Sean, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the information that we solicit. What I can just say is that we are engaged with our partners in the IDF about this generally. Let's not lose sight of the fact that ultimately here, Israel does have we support its ability to defend itself, and we support its ability to take out Hamas terrorists, to continue to hold to account those that were involved in the horrific October 7th terrorist attack. But again, we also will continue to stress that there is a moral and strategic imperative for Israel to minimize its impacts on civilians and to minimize civilian casualties. And lastly, the last point I'll make on this is that we are the reason we're having this conversation is because Hamas has a clear track record of continuing to co-locate itself among civilian infrastructure, use civilians as human shields. That's not hyperbole. There is a clear track record of that.
Sure. Can I just follow up on that?
Sure. Tom, go
I
ahead.
mean, are you satisfied with the credibility of what the Israelis are saying about, I mean, because you quoted their claim about a number of militants being in the building, and they published pictures and names of people they've said have been, in their words, eliminated. Are you happy with the credibility of that information?
So I'm not going to speak to any satisfaction or not, Tom. What I will say is that we have a robust relationship, a robust information sharing relationship with our Israeli partners. And when things like this happen over the course of this conflict, we have solicited more and additional information from the IDF, and that relationship will continue. What I can say broad.
Verify independently.
I'm just not going to speak to the specifics in which way we work with them, but this is a close and robust relationship, and when we have or require additional information, we're not hesitant to ask our partners in Israel for it, and that will continue to be the case.
I mean, there's fairly strong evidence that at least 3 of the people they've published pictures of since Saturday and named were not killed in that incident, were killed in incidents before. That's according to Euromed Human Rights Monitor, who's been going through the list. I mean, one of them, Muntar or Montasar Daher, who Israel described as an Islamic Jihad operative. I mean, you can go on Facebook and see the picture of him being mourned as being dead was from the day before, with a relative or a friend saying that was in an airstrike on an apartment west of Gaza City, so a completely different incident. I mean, do you verify these things?
Tom, I will let the IDF speak to its own operations, and as I said, we have a very close information sharing relationship with our partners in Israel. I'll let them speak to their own operations, but again, there is a clear, provable track record of Hamas using civilians as human shields, co-locating itself amongst civilian infrastructure. That does not minimize the moral and strategic imperative that Israel has to minimize civilian casualties, but they do have a clear track record of doing this. And as I said, protected facilities may lose their status when they are utilized by combatants in this way.
But there's also a moral and strategic imperative for the information to be accurate and credible after the fact, because it may or may not justify an international humanitarian law. So I think, you know, what Sean was talking about effectively was the issue of proportionality. If you have many, many dozens of civilians killed, there has to be very strong and clear and overwhelming evidence that those killed created a risk that Israel attacking them gave them a clear military advantage. That's what international humanitarian law says. So if it is emerging that some of these people were actually killed in previous incidents, there's not even an accurate account of people that were killed.
There is of course a moral and strategic imperative to make sure that any operation that's being conducted is rooted in salient, accurate, and most up-to-date information. That would be the case not just for Israel, but for any country that has a military. But again, as it relates to the details around this, I'm not going to get into the operations, and I will let our partners in Israel speak to it.
Particular incident. So Sean has asked you whether, if you know, U.S.-made weapons were used. There is reporting, actually, CNN report that U.S.-made small diameter bombs were indeed used in the school attack. So I just want to understand, is the State Department trying to verify that information or not?
So Humaira, we have a strong...
These are U.S.-made weapons, and you regularly send these weapons to Israel. So while I understand it's an IDF operation, there is reporting that the weapons used are U.S. supplied. So I'm wondering if there is a systematic effort at this building to monitor how U.S.-made weapons are being used.
Of course there is, which we have talked about a number of times in this briefing room. There are, of course, a number of tools and levers at the United States' disposal to continue to ensure that U.S. security assistance is used within appropriate confines of international humanitarian law.
And so far,
we've talked about.
After 10 months of war,
I'm certainly not going to speak to the ongoing and deliberative process, Humaira.
In accordance with law.
Israel is a country in which we have a robust security partnership with. That should be no surprise to you. I'm not going to speak to ongoing and deliberative processes, but as we do with any country in which we have a security relationship, there are tools at our disposal to ensure that the use of security systems are consistent with international humanitarian law. That is an ongoing, around-the-clock effort that continues to be rooted in a lot of things. It's in close coordination with our embassies and consulates. It's in close coordination with NGOs and humanitarian organizations and civil society, and that continues to be the case. As it relates to this specific incident, Humaira, I don't have any assessment to offer. I am not going to speak to Israeli operations from up here.
Right. So since we're at it, can I ask about Netze Yehuda, the Israeli battalion that you guys needed extra information, and in the end, U.S. decided to clear that battalion, and they're going to be able to receive U.S. security assistance. Can you tell us what accountability measures they've taken that basically made you take this decision, that you're satisfied?
Sure, Humaira. So just a little bit to take a step back, we made public in April, the Department of State found that after a careful review that incidents of gross violations of human rights by 2 units of the Israeli Defense Forces and 2 civilian authority units had been effectively remediated. The department has, for the past several months, continued a process to review an additional unit to evaluate new information provided by the government of Israel. And after thoroughly reviewing that information, we've determined that that violations by this unit have been effectively remediated, consistent with the Leahy process. in the crux of that information, Humaira, was that 2 of the soldiers for whom military prosecutors had concluded further action was necessary were swiftly removed from their combat positions, have since left the military, and are ineligible to serve in the reserves. Additionally, the IDF has taken several steps to avoid a recurrence of incidents. It has enhanced screening requirements for personnel recruited into that battalion, and it has put in place new control mechanisms and training efforts around trainings for individuals who join that battalion. Specifically, soldiers now receive a 2-week educational seminar unique to the battalion, and conduct is documented. But again, I will let our partners in Israel speak to more specifically to their operations.
Will these individuals be prosecuted in Israel?
That is that's not for the United States to speak to. That's it's a question for the Israeli justice
Have you
system.
guys sought that from them?
Again, that's a question for the Israeli justice system. That's not something I would speak to from up
for
here.
Israeli settlers, for example, in the West Bank, you have taken action when they haven't prosecuted them. So are you applying the same criteria to this one or not?
So these are a little bit different circumstances, Humaira. Let me just say broadly that when it comes to any actions, whatever they may be, if we find them to be destabilizing or contradictory to our stated goal of a 2-state solution and wanting stability into the region, we of course won't hesitate to take action, but I'm not going to speculate further on this.